Madhav Menon, who's joining us live right now from Mumbai. Thanks very much for being with us on the show. Senior lawyer with a perspective on what this all means for both parties, the government and, of course, the telecom companies. Mr. Menon, are we expecting every company to sue the government or, sue each other, as the case may be? Lawyers basically out there in the open with this big case.
See, the fact that the review petition of the Government of India has been listed now for consideration and for hearing on the 13th of April, I think we'll have to sit with fingers crossed and await how does the matter get further developed and to what extent does the court concede to the request that the Government of India is trying to make. One practical difficulty which has been brought forth is that the February order, which suggests that auction has to be done by the Government of India within, say, 4 months and so, well, that doesn't seem to be possible, and the Government of India probably is coming to the court with a genuine difficulty that it would need a longer time, more than a year, probably till the first quarter of 2013, as you rightly said. Then that would be one aspect of the matter, and then probably there are several other angles in this matter. Now, Raja's petition, we understand, has not been entertained, although Raja is the most affected person. The February order gives findings which are against the interest of Raja without Raja being a party, and that apparently seems to be the case of miscarriage of justice or violation of principles of natural justice. But this is after all, as we say, review is a very narrow scope. There is a very small window for any agreed party to prevail upon the apex court to revise or review its order once the order has been passed earlier.
Mr. Menon, just to interrupt you, you seem to be pretty hopeful that something more concrete could come out of the fact that the government's petition has been admitted. But the fact of the matter is that's largely a clarificatory petition. That's only going to give clarity on whether the auctions can be held at a later date and whether the first come, first serve, and whether auction should be the method of allocating every national resource. The fact is that it's end game as far as telcos are concerned. The licenses are gone and there's finality to this.
No, that's right. You see, I'm not expecting that the Supreme Court would be, turning upside down its earlier order of February. But then a few clarifications here or there probably may have some kind of repercussions on various other findings also. But as the cancellation of licenses stand, we find the consequence are, so enormous that the companies from abroad which have invested huge sums of money on making sure that the Government of India had issued licenses, they put in money, and if suddenly the courts in the same country cancels those licenses, what is their fault? And therefore they might even seek to sue with heavy damages. Right. Probably the Government of India also may be one of the parties.
Mr. Menon, we have someone who's possibly going to be able to answer that question. Telecom Secretary R. Chandrasekhar joins us live on the phone line from New Delhi. Mr. Chandrasekhar, thank you so much for talking with us here at ET. Now, firstly, your initial reaction to the fact that the government's petition has been admitted by the Supreme Court, even though the petition of all the other private telecom companies have been quashed.
Well, obviously we are happy that the review petition of the government has been accepted, and now that it is posted for hearing on the 13th, we will look forward to that hearing and await the decision of the Supreme Court on that review petition.
But Mr. Chandrasekhar, there's a sort of anticipation that there's likely to be a more of a clarificatory result expected on April 13th and not more. Can you help us understand that?
Well, it's difficult and it's also probably inappropriate for me to comment on what might be the outcome of the Supreme Court, of the Supreme Court hearing. So we will have to await that. In our review petition, it's a limited review petition. We have not questioned the judgment of the court insofar as the cancellation is concerned or the directions to go ahead with the auction. and that the judgment would come into operation after 120 days. We have, however, sought certain review of certain observations with regard to the policy making aspects of the observations of the Supreme Court in terms of the role of the executive and the role of the judiciary in such policy making, and also the applicability of the directions for auction to the telecom sector going forward, as well as to all natural resources.
Right. Mr. Chandrasekhar,
review petition.
Right. The one clarity that everyone in the industry would like to have is on 2G auctions. You've clearly maintained that it's going to be almost impossible to conduct these auctions within June and sought an extended time frame. How hopeful are you that the court will be considerate as far as that demand is concerned?
Well, first of all, I think it needs to be clearly understood that the court did not, in our understanding, fix a timeline of 4 months for the conduct of the auction. They had passed their orders with regard to the licenses, quashing them, and they had indicated that that order would be operative after 4 months. Now, and separately, the department was also directed to carry out the auctions. We have therefore filed a clarificatory application before the court indicating our schedule and the timelines that we have in front of us for the conduct of the auction after going through all the steps that are required for carrying out an auction of this nature. The gap between the time period which we estimate for the conduct of the auction and the time period which the Supreme Court had indicated after which its directions would become operative has also been placed before them. And this is what has been contained in the clarificatory application. But I don't think that there is any, at this moment, there are any directions or any decision on that particular application.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, now that there's finality to the fact that 122 telecom licenses have been cancelled, do you fear that some of these global telecom companies will invoke bilateral treaties? They've already threatened to do so. What is the government's level of preparedness as far as this is concerned? What's the big worry there?
Well, as I said, we are preparing to carry out the auction in accordance with the directions of the Supreme Court. And that auction would also provide an opportunity to the telecom companies to participate in that auction process. The Supreme Court order in no way bars them from participating in that auction. So that is certainly one window for the companies which lost their licenses. As far as the other applications of the companies are concerned, we will certainly deal with that after looking at all aspects of the situation.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, surely in that preparedness, there's also going to be a monetary element that has to be catered for. After all, any amount of bilateral treaties, if they are triggered off, would be also in order to save the investment of these firms. Do you think that the government needs to be a little more prepared for the kind of damages that some of these companies might claim in the process?
Well, as I said, there is still an opportunity for the companies in the auction process. And I'm sure that each of the companies would evaluate their options in the light of these aspects, in light of the clarificatory application that we have filed before the Supreme Court, and then decide what is the appropriate course of action for themselves.
Thanks very much. I appreciate your time being with us here on ET Now, the Telecom Secretary. Back to Majid Memon, who is joining us and has been patient with us throughout. Mr. Memon, just listening to what he said towards the end about there being a window of opportunity for some of those global players in India through bilateral treaties, does that give you a sign of hope, a signal, a hint that there is a way, a legal recourse out there for them which may involve that their investment remains somewhat safe in India?
No, I would seek to make a bit, contribution to what discussion you had with Mr. Chandrasekhar now, if you permit me. Now, Mr. Chandrasekhar is right in saying that we'll have to await what Supreme Court does on the 13th. That's fine. But, as far as auctioning is concerned, the process of auctioning might take longer time is also not very important. The Supreme Court will have to appreciate the practical difficulty of the Government of India and probably permit them to take their own time and do it as fast as possible. But the million-dollar question is that earlier when the licenses have been cancelled, when Supreme Court was apprehensive that it was given away at a throwaway price, and probably that has resulted in huge or substantial loss to the state exchequer. Now, that test is going to be now applied when the auctioning will open. And do you think that 1,450 crore or something less than 15 crores, 1,500 crores was the price at which it was given, which the licenses have been cancelled? Now, do you think that when the auction process takes place, necessarily the amount would be more than that? If the bidders do not go beyond 1,400, then where is the question of recovering money? Probably we may even, people will feel that, well, there is no interest in, no profit in this line. We can't give more than the money for which the licenses were given earlier. These are all speculative questions which shall be answered only with the passage of time when the process of auctioning begins. And therefore, people, some section of the Indian think tank has been, particularly legal think tank, has been saying that is it that the Supreme Court had exceeded its limits and overstretched its powers in translating into the policy-making decision of the executive. This makes me recall Lord Frankfurter, Justice Frankfurter, in his beautiful words, I would quote for the benefit of your viewers, that if judges want to be preachers, they should dedicate themselves to the pulpit. If they want to be basic policy makers, their place is in Parliament. Self-willed judges are most indefensible offenders in government under law. Therefore, the policy making is the domain, is the job of the Parliament, of the government. Right. It is not the business of the learned judges who may have their judicial wisdom, but they may not have the idea about the business working, about the policy decision. Right. There are many very welfare-oriented policies of the Government of India where monetary gain is not the first priority. Fair point. So all these things will unfold itself in the passage of time.
All right, Mr. Majid Memon, thank you so much for joining us with your candid thoughts. As always, appreciate that perspective. But I guess as it stands, one may say the damage is done. 7 telecom companies will stand to lose 122 licenses quashed, and there's no getting away from that. Shelley.